Hello everyone and welcome to this video where we will be going over FireMon backups. If you've never experienced a server failure and restoration, consider yourself fortunate. These are not enjoyable experiences and can take precious time away from an administrator's already demanding daily functions. FireMon is here to help with a secure and intuitive backup process that is simple to set up and can be automated to run when needed. We will be looking at how to run manual database backups, configure automatic backups and transfers, and perform a restoration with a backup file. Our first step will be to ensure that the administrative user we are logging in with has the backup operator permissions for taking backups. We do this by logging into the CLI using the SSH client of our choosing and type fmos user grant-privileges. We'll be prompted to grant extra privileges if the user does not have them, or if there are no other privileges to grant, we'll receive a message that there are no privileges selected. We can also revoke permissions by entering fmos user revoke-privileges. In our first example, we will be creating a manual backup, which is the easiest way of quickly creating a backup file. For this, we look to the CLI once again. We will simply enter the command fmos backup. By default, the file will be stored in /var/lib/backup/firemon, and the name will contain the device's hostname, date, and time. We can also enter what directory to put the file in, but we highly recommend not using the home directory because if this directory fills up, this will hinder the boot process. Next, we will need to use an SCP or SFTP application to transfer the file to a remote server. So now let's take a look at configuring automatic backups. By default, a database server takes backups every night at 23:48 hours or 12 minutes till midnight UTC time. So we will look at the settings available to us for changing that. The backup schedule will depend on factors including the network environment, how frequently changes are made, and of course, storage space. To configure the backup schedule, log into the fmos control panel, which is accessed using port 55555. In the blue menu bar, click on OS and Backup. There are quite a few options to choose from on this page, but they do not all need to be enabled at once. The automatic backup configurations run the fmos backup command in the background. So if we were to add arguments at the top left, these would be the additional arguments to that command. For a list of arguments, we can run fmos backup --help in the CLI, and we can see that the default arguments are quiet and prune. The enabled options holds a Boolean value of either true or false. As we can see from the information button, if the server holds the role of database server, automatic backups are enabled by default. Next, we'll look at the schedule menu to the right. The options are hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly, and depending on our choice is how we will configure the rest of the options. If hourly is chosen, we can select the minute of the hour to begin. If daily, we can choose which hour and minute. If weekly, we can set the day of the week with the hour and minute. And if monthly, we select which day of the month with the hour and the minute. The fmos installation and configuration guide shows how we can also set all these parameters in the CLI. Now, it's not necessary to configure the hour and minute, and if we leave them blank, the default time of 23:48 UTC will be used. Now, the setup still requires that backups be manually transferred to a remote location, but if automatic transferal of backups is needed, FireMon has a script available on our server that can automatically run after a backup has completed successfully. The requirements for setting this option are a host with SCP or SFTP access, a user account on the remote host, and a directory with enough space for backups. There are two ways of making the necessary configuration changes. Your FireMon product specialist will have access to a special script to make all the needed configurations automatically, or we can run through the process manually. Regardless of the method used, ensure that the remote user and directory have write access. If configuring the settings manually, we need to first install the remote-sftp.sh script with the command shown on the screen. This command will basically make a copy of the example file, change the name, and enable its functionality as a script. Next, we change the following parameters to match the remote server location, user credentials, and transfer method. The parameters to configure are destination IP or FQDN, user destination directory, add a password, and the transfer mode. Finally, we will need to copy the FM backup user's public key from the database server to the backup host's authorized_keys file, either by using the SCP or SSH-copy-ID commands as shown. If we are unable to use the commands to transfer the key, the authorized_keys file can be created in the .ssh directory, and the fmbackup.ssh-pub key contents can be copied manually. To test our new setup, run a manual backup with fmos backup --prune, and then we can also check the integrity of the files both on the local server as well as the destination by comparing the MD5 hash. While taking server backups is important for ensuring we are covered in case of disaster, being able to restore a server is just as important. Server restoration from a backup file is straightforward. Access the CLI of the database server once again, and type fmos restore and specify the directory path as well as the file name. In conclusion, there are a few details to consider when managing backups. First and foremost, while VM snapshots can be more convenient, fmos does not support them. This is because the file system is encrypted with an irrevocable key which is tied to the specific VM machine ID. Next, backup size will start at around 200 megabytes, but can increase depending on the configurations, reports, number of devices in your ecosystem, and the number of revisions on the system. Speaking of revisions, we should also configure the revision retention policy, which can be found in the administration page of the Security Manager. Click on Settings and Security Manager, where we can configure the number of days to keep device revisions and the minimum device revisions to keep. These settings determine when revisions are eligible for deletion. In our example, we will keep 2 revisions in the database that are over 60 days old. Anything else over 60 days will be deleted. If the first option is left blank, revisions will be kept indefinitely and will fill up partition space, as well as significantly increase backup size. Check out the fmos installation and configuration guide for more details on backups, as well as how to back up and restore certificate authority servers in fully distributed ecosystems.